Welcome to Writing Tips for Sustainable Projects. This video covers ways to make your sustainable improvement proposal or plan look more professional for business purposes while still meeting academic requirements if this is a college project. It is a careful balance between academic writing and business professional writing. I'll try to point out the things that you might want to change for one or the other. By the end of this session, you will be able to structure your writing well, edit thoroughly, incorporate graphics, and follow the APA rules for formatting. First up, a sustainable improvement proposal is often long enough to be divided into chapters. This is very different from most other papers you've written because you have to organize your writing according to the topics in each chapter, not according to your creative flow. This structure works well for every chapter of your proposal. Each chapter should start with the purpose of the chapter and a preview or outline of what will be covered. This gives your reader a roadmap to the chapter so that it's not a surprise when coming to the next section of the chapter. This is especially true when the different sections of the chapter are not obviously related or when the reader may not be familiar with all the steps in the process. If you have a template or directions for submitting the proposal, be sure to follow them. This means addressing all the requirements listed, whether it's an academic assignment or a government template, like answering a request for a proposal. You should structure each section of your chapter by first describing the sustainability or management theory or tool that you're using, because your readers probably are not familiar with many or most of them. Then applying it to your project and providing a graph, chart, a photo, a model, or some other illustration of what the theory or tool shows in your case. And finally, analyzing the results and drawing conclusions. For example, if you're writing about the stakeholders affected by or affecting the project, you should describe stakeholder theory, create a stakeholder model that reflects those that you need to address in your project, and then analyze the types or groups of stakeholders identified in the model. How would they affect the project or be affected by it? Or as another example, if you're doing a waste audit, you would describe the procedure used for waste audits, then show a table with the raw data and a Pareto chart displaying the amounts and cumulative percentages of waste categories, and finally, analyze the highest priorities for waste reduction based on the data. This is an excellent structure to use throughout the proposal because using a parallel structure gives the writing a rhythm that makes it clear and easy to follow. If it seems familiar to those of you who remember my prior courses that had e-portfolios, this structure is the same as the e-portfolio structure. At the end of each chapter, you should have a paragraph that summarizes key points, ending with a transition to the next or future chapters. There should be a thread that ties all the chapters together in a cohesive project, so you should make the thread explicit by explaining how the information and analysis from the chapter will be used in future chapters. Now let's talk about some of the skills for success that you'll need to write this proposal at a professional or college level. First of those is writing skills. There are several areas that need special attention. These are areas that are often neglected in college classes or at work because they are time-consuming. However, we do need to do them now because your proposals will not be successful unless you do. Let's face it, most academic writing is submitted with minimal editing and never revised. The same is true of much business writing. However, major academic research and high-stake business proposals must be written well, and so it's essential that they be edited multiple times. Make sure you write the chapters as soon as possible after you gather your research or data, giving yourself plenty of time to edit. When it comes to grammar and spelling, do you know what your weak areas are? If not, keep a list. Sort the problems into categories like commas, or sentence fragments. And when you know what your weak area is, study the right ways and make a special run-through looking at that problem area. As you're editing, read your writing aloud at least once or twice. You'll catch many errors and smooth out the rough edges in your writing. You should edit at least 4 or 5 times. However, don't take the time to fix orphan headings, which are headings at the bottom of the page, or other pagination issues, because you'll be editing throughout the process, and you shouldn't do final formatting until you're close to finishing up. Make it easy for your readers to follow the organization of your chapter by leading the eye with headings or bullets. Readers are often looking for specific pieces of information that are of interest to them, so help them find it. You can also highlight key terms in a paragraph with italics, or set off formulas that you want to include by centering the formula. Most of you probably feel comfortable with word processing programs like Microsoft Word. But there are a lot of little tricks in formatting fonts, paragraphs, and tables, as well as inserting images, smart art, charts, and tables of contents. You will find that it is probably easier to do some of these in other programs, like PowerPoint, Lucidchart, or Excel, and copy and paste them into Word. Business professional tables are the only exception that I recommend when you're writing a sustainability improvement proposal, unless you have to adhere strictly to APA rules, because frankly, APA tables can be really hard to read and follow. Use color to add interest without going wild. Graphic skills will really help you stand out from your competition, whether you're applying for a job or submitting a proposal. Let's talk about 4 areas where you can shine: models and management tools, photos, mapping, and properly attributed images. It's very boring to try to read page after page of writing with no relief, especially if it's double-spaced. Relevant graphics, such as charts, tables, photos, or theoretical models, can illustrate the key points made in the writing. However, don't include graphics that are pretty or cute, but don't explain or illustrate the written ideas. Your proposal will already be long, and you will detract from the seriousness of the proposal if it has unnecessary pictures in it. Let's take a few minutes to review how to make your graphics look professional. Models can be created with SmartArt, PowerPoint, or with other graphics programs like Lucidchart. Take some time to make it as professional as you can. Think of whether it would pass muster in a report to a board of directors or a business-to-business proposal. Photos can be useful to illustrate problems identified in a facility walkthrough, or solutions like recommended more sustainable products. Your photos are best, but you can use online photos if you are citing them properly. You will likely want to include some kind of map for some portion of your audit, whether you're mapping out a process with a flowchart or mapping out a facility walkthrough with an eco-map. And you'll find that it's important to hone your skills in Excel. Sustainability professionals have to transform data they've collected into information that makes sense to decision makers. To do that, you need to take a step-by-step approach to setting up your data, using formulas for calculations, and creating professional charts. You'll need to select the best way to show the data from your baseline audits or measurement of improvements. It depends first on whether the data is categorical, like gender or types of garbage, or continuous, like daily energy use or Likert survey questions. Categorical charts show the proportions of percentages and can be displayed using pie charts or bar charts, like Pareto charts. Continuous data shows increasing or decreasing, stable or cyclical trends over time, or significant changes after an improvement is tried, and can be displayed using line charts, like run or control charts, or bar charts, like Likert scale survey questions. A couple of tips when dressing up the chart to look professional. You'll want the chart to convey the most important information quickly and clearly. Consider what kind of title you need. If you're following APA, don't put a title in the chart. Instead, type it as a numbered figure. Consider whether you need a legend and where it should be positioned. Determine whether you'll need data labels to clearly and quickly communicate relevant information. Think about whether you should use a three-dimensional chart. They look spiffy, but sometimes it's harder to see the differences between categories. Choose colors that clearly differentiate between categories, and make sure that all font sizes in the chart are legible. Finally, you can select a chart design that clearly outlines each category. Try the different chart options and select the clearest one, not necessarily the fanciest one. Non-standard choices like cones convey less information, not more. A few additional tips. Axis titles can convey useful information regarding the type of data or measure. If you have some longer data names, like cardboard in this chart, you can try angling them to make them easier to read. Determine whether grid lines add to the clarity or to the confusion. Use legends if you have multiple categories, but not if you have only one category, like waste on this slide. Consider whether a three-dimensional chart makes it easier or more difficult to see the data. You can see in this example that a combination of 3D bars and grid lines actually makes the information a bit more difficult to interpret. In the same way, you might want to add a line to show the mean or average, but not if it adds to the confusion. Finally, it's very important that you order the data in the right way. Usually, you order categorical data, like waste, from largest to smallest, so that you can see the type of waste that's causing the biggest problem. Continuous data, on the other hand, is usually organized in the order in which it happened, so that you can see patterns. If you're not trying to sell your writing, you may use images off the internet, as long as you properly cite your sources. However, you need to be careful of the clarity of your image, especially if you enlarge the image. Make sure the edges are sharp and not fuzzy or pixelated, like they are in this image, not stretched or squished, which is really obvious with circles or images of people. The last things we will cover are guidelines specific to academic papers. You can decide what you might want to use or modify in a business setting. One of the best available resources is free, the Purdue University Online Writing Lab, or Purdue OWL. The College of Business and the College of Education use APA guidelines for publishing academic papers and journal articles. Purdue OWL has guidance for every aspect of an academic paper. We suggest following these guidelines for most areas. As noted before, guidance for APA tables is not in this video because it's not as compatible with a business look, and we suggest that you opt for the business look for dual-purpose papers. For strictly academic papers, please refer to Purdue OWL for items not covered here. You must have in-text citations for every idea that you did not originate, including information that you free wrote or pulled from memory, in addition to the information that you researched. Check it out. Look at any research journal or dissertation. There's usually an in-text citation for every paragraph that is not original research. Your original research is your baseline audit and pilot. Unless you can identify yourself as an expert in your field, and that takes years in the field, you need to find a source for other information that you write. The second note is that you don't put the citation at the end of the paragraph. Put it as early in the paragraph as you start using the information from an external source. at the start of a sentence, as in the first example, or at the end of an early sentence, as in the second example. APA is odd in that it assumes that everything else in that paragraph is from the same source, unless you cite something from a different source, and then you put in another citation. Then APA assumes the rest of the paragraph is from that second source, and so forth. With APA, you can't be creative in your headings. APA has very specific guidance on how to set them up. The first level, like Chapter 1, is centered, bold, and the first letters of keywords capitalized. That's called title case heading. The second level, which you might use for your major section headings, is flush left, bold, and caps for the first letters of key words. Continue on from there for the additional subheadings. Start your list of references at the beginning of a project so that you don't have to spend many hours recreating your mindset and research at the end. A reference is formatted with a hanging indent, which is found in the paragraph drop-down menu. And it ends up looking like this. You can also start creating any appendices from the start. You should use appendices for any information that is more detailed than is necessary to make your points in the chapters. This can include any tables or audit checklists that are longer than a page, detailed results from surveys, and detailed information on the business. In the chapter, summarize or excerpt checklist and survey results. Your next step will be to get a friendly but honest reviewer. This can be your instructor, a college writing tutor, a family member, or a coworker, preferably someone who is a pretty good writer. Make the changes they suggest, but use your best judgment. This is your work, and you can do an amazing job and make a real difference with your project. Finally, when you provide your improvement plan to the ultimate stakeholder who will be implementing your plan, decide how to make it look business professional. Start with a professional cover page. Then remember that academic writing using APA guidelines is double-spaced. You'll probably want to make your paper less than double-spaced, but not single-spaced. The Microsoft Word default is 1.08 lines, which is good. Or use something similar like 1.1 or 1.2. When you do this, this will disrupt all your pages, creating orphan headings and unusual page lengths, which is why you don't do those adjustments as you're in the earlier stages of the editing process. Your next step is to adjust any pages to fix orphan headings and very short pages. Use page breaks or adjust the order of your paragraph, as long as it still reads well, so that your final product is balanced and beautiful. Now it's your turn. Write the first chapter of your sustainability improvement project. Pay special attention to structure. For structure, set up your Word document with an outline of your first chapter, using the headings you expect to use. Select the appropriate font, line spacing, and paragraph style to make your writing easy. And then write your overview paragraph. For editing, write your first draft. Then edit your draft at least 4 times. Be sure to read it aloud at some point and flesh out the parts that don't make sense yet and trim anything unnecessary to the point you're trying to make. Next, check spelling and grammar. Then, create and add graphics. You can do this as you write or after you're finished with your first draft. During the editing process, make the graphics look as professional as you can. Finally, make sure you're following the appropriate guidelines like APA. Scan the key web pages first to become familiar with the most used guidelines. Then you can use a just-in-time learning approach to determine the right format for each heading, paragraph, citation, and reference. After a while, it will become second nature. So there we are. This has been a quick overview of writing guidelines for dual-use academic and professional sustainability improvement plans, including suggestions for structure, editing, graphics, and formal guidelines. Thanks for listening. I hope you found it useful, and enjoy the journey.